Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Winchester for bringing this debate today. I mean, to do this in Childcare and Early Years Education Week is really important, but it's even more important that every single person in this House is constantly celebrating the role of early years providers, the workforce, and really recognising them as educators, because the Honourable Member for Winchester is absolutely right. We could not do without of these people. I mean, my husband and I work full-time, we work incredibly long hours, definitely not a 9-to-5 existence, and I need a real muddle of support to get me out of the house dressed on time and making sure I can string sentences together, which I probably won't be able to do brilliantly today. But the childcare costs and pressures on families around this country are acute. I put the honourable members to have a look at Instagram and do some Googling on the hashtags of parenting and children and childcare. I mean, it's quite worrying, some of the stats and information that comes out, because people are incredibly stretched. And I've said this before, but the juggle is real. And it doesn't matter what you do as a job or whether you're not working at all. Mums and dads who have little people running around with a seemingly infinite amount of energy each day means that every day is stretched, even before you find out that your early years provider, nursery, childcare person cannot be helpful that day because they're stuck at home in isolation perfectly well, but they've had a COVID test, or even before that nursery has had to close down because they just can't make the numbers work on the business case. And you know, the military planning that goes into all of my friends' days to get children into the right place and the right time. Families just can't cope with these sudden shocks, and I think it is for us in this place to try and find ways of smoothing out those shocks, or at least lessening the impact. If anybody has a chance to listen to a podcast called Parenting Hell by the comedians and dads Josh Widdicombe, I can't say it. They get kids to try and say Josh Widdicombe, but they can say it better than I can. Josh Widdicombe and Rob Beckett. It is a brilliant look and an entertaining version of all the chaos that comes from real life parenting. It's a nice bit of my week to know that I'm part of a big club that is very dysfunctional. But so when we know that the transition to parenthood is one of the greatest pressures on a relationship or a marriage, we've got to do better at stopping these sudden shocks and stopping these problems, because the system is quite literally causing family breakdowns, and we know the impact of family breakdowns on the country, on relationships, on families, on the finances of the country as well. So as we've heard from a number of members, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer are incredibly committed to this. They've recognised the early years workforce. They are very respectful of them. And the new Secretary of State for Education, on being made up, actually included the word families in his strapline and his mission statement alongside education and skills. And I think that shows a real commitment to the cause. And all of this has led to the Treasury quadrupling the money going into the early years education, and millions of pounds going forward to support family hubs, which will be transformational in our local areas where we can get them off the ground. And the Best Start for Life programme, again, transformational, and will really see a focus for families and for our little people. But we have to go further. Just a couple of points that I think we've already touched on, but the high staff turnover rates. In 2019, the staff turnover rate in the early years workforce, I'm just thinking about nursery staff only at the moment, excluding childminders, the turnover rate was 24% compared to a UK average of 15 to 18% in other sectors. So the turnover can be calculated to have a cost at £879 million in 2019 alone. The Social Mobility Commission report into the stability of early years workforce in England found that 6 of the most salient barriers to the stable early years workforce are low income, high workload and responsibilities, over-reliance on female practitioners, insufficient training and opportunities for progression, low status, reputation and negative organisational culture. I mean, just to draw, it's a pretty stark list, but to think about the fact that this is a workforce that feels that they have low status, and they are the people that we trust our most precious charges, and we send our little people into their care. These are people that are incredibly skilled. They have qualifications, solid qualifications. It's often a vocational passion to go and want to work in this profession. And they have much reserves of patience that I certainly do not have when I'm trying to feed my toddler vegetables, which she will not eat. The other point is low public funding in comparison to other levels of education. Public subsidy for early years is about £3,000 per pupil, compared to £5,000 in primary, £6,600 in secondary, and £6,500 for university students. This is incredibly frustrating, given that it is now accepted, I would say, that the first 1,001 days of a child's life is the most important. And we've heard about that early intervention can not only change the child's life and the family's life early on, we've actually changed the path of the life and probably changed the path of the type of state services that that child and then adult will use. So why are we not investing more up front and upstream? To conclude, but I would say I do want to thank, while I'm on my feet, the early years providers in Stroud and around the country. You are levelling up on a daily basis. You've been levelling up even before it was a thing with the title, and a small but perfectly formed gang of MPs and peers and a very dedicated ministerial team really believe in the early years workforce and the value that all of you bring to future generations. So I'm actually working with the think tank Onward to investigate and research many of the childcare issues that we've heard today and childcare costs. And I also I sit on the DWP Select Committee, and the chair has kindly, and the committee has kindly agreed to let us do an investigation into the childcare element of universal credit with the cap and the upfront payments. So we will be doing some work on that this year, and I would hope that's helpful to the ministerial team.